there's anything we can all agree on, it's that capitalism does not favor anybody, especially if you're the common man. Because first, we were complaining about capitalism requiring that we all have to go to work amidst a pandemic because the economic system wants to make money off of us and expects that, you know, we should be able to sacrifice our lives and our health for the corporations. And we were complaining about that. And then George Floyd was killed, and rightfully there are protests all over the United States, and you still have some businesses so focused on making money that they would rather not step forward and have a conversation or even take a stand with regards the current crisis. Not even the current crisis, because if you saw my recommendations for the white supremacist prompt, you would know that this crisis is centuries in the making. But the present protests that are going on, some organizations are still refusing to say anything because they want to make money. They want to keep making money. Money is a driving force. Money has been a driving force for so many things in our society. So I don't... Capitalism, everybody. Capitalism. And we'll start things off with The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. Now, I know that Robin has gotten a makeover in that the old stories made him out to be a crook who was very self-serving and was only out to fill his own pockets. Although, to be honest, I see no problem with that either. But I do really love the version of himself that steals from the rich and gives to the poor, and that's the reason why it's the one that kicks off this list. Next on the list is The Dispossessed by Ursula Le Guin. Now, usually when people think of Ursula Le Guin, they usually think of a fantasy series, The Earthsea Cycle, and some of those people do not know that she also writes science fiction, one of which is The Dispossessed, where we explore the relationship between twin planets in the Tau Ceti system. We have Anaris and we have Horus, the later of which was colonized a while ago, before the story starts, and as such had developed into a capitalist property obsessed state. However, Odo rejects this, the state of being that she grew up in and was well aware of in Horus, and instead gives up all the trappings of wealth and luxury and comfort and security that she's always known and relocates to Anaris instead, this dry mining planet, where she then proceeds to set up a more socialist state, one without money, property rights or laws. Now, that was 160 years ago. Present day, we follow our main protagonist, Shevek, who is driven by a desire to eradicate the divide that separated his home planet Anaris from the sister planet Horus and bring about some much needed change. A removal of the divides and a fusion of their two ways of life, a way of trying to see if there's a middle ground that can be achieved, if you will. Next is Capitalist, a ghost story by Arundhati Roy. Now, a lot of the books on this list are fictional, but I did sprinkle a couple of non-fiction work in between, just as I mentioned in my white supremacy recommendation videos. I do think that looking at non-fictional accounts also lets us to see the real life impact of capitalism on people, not just fictional lives, but people that are living in this present time, in this time that we're in. And it's a further way of critically analyzing a system that has for so long brainwashed a lot of people into actually believing that if you work hard enough in a capitalist system, you will make it in life. We all know that is a fallacy. And Arundhati Roy takes us on the wealth disparity that exists in present day India, whereby you have the top 100 wealthiest people in India. Their combined wealth and assets makes up a quarter of the GDP, right? The gross domestic product of India as a country. Please note that India has a population of 1.2 billion people. Out of a population of 1.2 billion people, a quarter of the country's GDP is the assets of 100 people. That wealth disparity is heartbreaking and enraging, should be enraging to anybody and everybody, especially when you realize that quite a substantial percentage of India's 1.2 billion population lives on less than $2 a day. Less than $2 a day. That is insane. And it further shows that capitalism is a system that lives to reward the rich whilst it exploits the poor. The fourth book on the list is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Yes, I'm certain nobody is surprised. I have not hid it on my channel that Six of Crows is one of my favorite books, and I'm not just recommending this book for this prompt because it's one of my favorite books. I'm bringing it up because Capitalism is a state that is governed by money. Those who have money are the ones with power. Being able to swindle others out of it earns you respect. Merchants are the revered in Capitalism, and so many people aspire to be stockbrokers. And in the midst of it all is a young man who rules and governs the streets with smarts and cunning and a deep understanding of money and the power it holds, and who wields this power to get vengeance on the people who have taken from him the ones he loves. Then of course you add the fact that there's fat rep, there's queer rep, there are people with both visible and invisible disabilities, it's a gang of thieves, there's chosen family. There's so much for me to love with Six of Crows. But I particularly love how Casbrecker has made capitalism its fucking ass bitch. Then there's The Lies of Lamora by Scott Lynch, which is the first book in the Gentleman Bastards trilogy. Now, any book that starts its story by showing you how children from a plague-infested area or region are sold as chattel, because the monies that govern the state, the powers that be, do not want a spread of the disease, and simultaneously, are considering the fact that these children technically do not bring any value to them. Any book that starts like that is one that shows you just how deeply entrenched capitalism is in the system, especially when you further realize that the slipping of a couple of coins or a lot of coins in the right hands would release some of these children who are marked to be sold as chattel, and instead are set free, or rather allowed to go free with someone who wants to use them for his own thieving purposes. When you realize that, then you realize that these children are not being sold as chattel because the state is concerned about the health and safety of its citizens. It's just that those children, the monetary value that they bring has to be equivalent or worthy enough of them being considered as beings of value who should not be sold. And when one of those freed kids rises up the ranks to become one of the most brilliant criminal masterminds, it is the most satisfying thing to read. The most utterly satisfying thing to read. Now that I think about it, it does seem like I have a particular fascination for thieves, doesn't it? Next is Gateway by Frederick Pohl. What happens when a capitalist state preys on its poor and desperate citizens by creating some sort of space-time lottery that would send these desperate people into outer space in a journey that could either be a suicide mission that would have them dying, or one that they could return with alien artifact that they can then patent and become very rich from. Now, I'm going to prefix this by stating that I have not read this book at all, but I do plan on getting to it sometime eventually. And that is because I find the premise of it very, very intriguing. But word is, and this is like a almost unanimous statement, that the lead character, Robin Hood Broadhead, what the dumbest kind of fucking ass name is that? But anyway, Robin Hood Broadhead is a fucking dick. And all I'm just thinking is, oh my god, this is going to be The Magicians by Lev Grossman 2.0, because if you're like, for those that were like adjourned my channel when I was reading it last month, or was it 2 months ago? 2 months ago. For those that were part of my channel when I was reading it in April, you will know how much I could not stand. I could not fucking stand the narrator, Quentin Coldwater. I thought he was a selfish dick, immature, fucking annoying. And apparently word on the street is that Robin Hood Broadhead is like that, but down to a number 10. So all I can say is that pray for me, everybody, pray for me. But even if I cannot stand the narrator, and even if it is that you're considering if you can stand the narrator for yourself, if you do decide to read this book, I think that it shows the sheer depravity of a capitalist system and how it breeds in its people the desperation to survive in it no matter what. And that is a book that requires conversation, and the reason why it is on this list. Then there's We Are Never Meeting in Real Life, essays by Samantha Irby. The world is a living shit show. Corporations are draining our souls. There's pandemics. Racism is as ever still being ever present. Police brutality is still being police brutality. Classism is ever prevalent in the society, and sometimes you just need a good laugh. Not the dignified laugh that has you covering your mouth in a form of in a desire to maintain some sort of respectability, like ha 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 ha. Not that type of laughter. I mean the guttural, the deep, coming from the deep wells of your belly type laugh. The one that is almost vulgar and obscene, very irreverent, toilet humor, but one that contains within it several kernels of truth. And that is what we get with We're Never Meeting in Real Life. Samantha McIver Irby takes us on a journey from the legacies of poverty to how Black women deal with mental health, to how to eat pussy, to how to buy a strap-on. Yeah, you heard this too, right? To being fat, to making rent, to needing a job, to falling in love with a woman. It's funny, it's irreverent, it's gloriously queer, and an insight into a capitalist system that tries and always fails to keep her down. Apologies for the change in lighting. Everywhere just got really dark really fast, so I'm using the lights. The storm should pass over in a couple of hours, minutes. I can't say it these days, but it passes quickly, so the light will be restored. Next is Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty, which is the second non-fiction book on this list. And in this book, Thomas Piketty takes us on a decade-long exploration of how the capitalist system works, whereby the rich do way less work but earn a whole lot of money from, you know, their investments, real estate, stocks, shares, tax breaks, inheritance, etc., whilst the poorer members of the society, you know, struggle to make ends meet in a system that trickles down its wealth to the masses. The system is rigged, and this is the perfect book to bring out for those people that tell you that all you have to do is put in the work and the system would one day, eventually, sometime in the future, reward you. Lies. Then there's Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn, which I have stated on this channel is a book I love a lot. And it's a book that examines a system whereby those with money have all the power, and they're usually the elite, the educated, and in some cases the white in the book. And it is into this system that our main protagonist Margot, is born, and it is also this system that fuels Margot's desire to have money and the subsequent respect and power that having that money would bring to her. It is what drives her into sex work, and it is the justification that she ends up using for some of the most horrific decisions she takes in the book. Now, before you judge Margot harshly, Here Comes the Sun reminds you that when a system decides that your lack of wealth means that you are nothing and strips you of the acknowledgement and the protection that your other wealthy counterparts enjoy so readily, that dehumanization changes you, and pretending otherwise makes you not only a liar to others but a liar to yourself as well. And then there's The Weight of the Stars by Ancrum. I mean, what else would you call it that a private organization is so desperate to send people into space, and a particular woman itself, that the organization cannot afford to let it be known that this young girl is pregnant, because that would involve the loss of funding, that would involve the loss of the money that they have acquired. And so this organization, this private organization, will cover this and lie to the public until it's too late, until this child's mother is sent into space and the child is sent to live with her teenage father, all because, you know, it's more financially, it's a better financial decision to separate her from her mother, to have a mother travel and leave her baby girl behind. And that is one main character. The second main character is an orphan raising her younger brother and her younger brother's child in a trailer park because their parents died. And we exist in a system that does not go out of its way to look after the orphans. In fact, if it's possible for you to drop off the grid, they would be so delighted. You know, and this is the system that both our protagonists are dealing with in this book. And yet, Ancrum manages to give us a book that is beautifully soulful and queer and filled with a love for stars and a love for space. And I love this book. Can you tell that I love this book so much? Because I love this book. And the 11th book on the list is Confessions. Yes, Confessions of a Shopaholic by Sophie Kinsella. I mean, who is surprised? Show of hands, we're talking about FuckAThon here. And it's only fitting that this prompt has this book as part of the recommendations, because we're following Becky, who is living the most glamorous life. You know, she has a glamorous apartment in a glamorous part of town. She goes to expensive lunches with her friends. She has the designer's clothes. The only problem is that Becky is working a dead-end job that she is absolutely not inspired by. In fact, the dead-end job pays her practically nothing. So if you're wondering how on earth is Becky able to afford this lifestyle, Becky is living off of loans. She's swimming and drowning in debt, and she keeps putting off all the calls with regards to her paying off her debt by taking on even more loans and going into more debt. And she keeps trying to figure out exactly how she can you know, get out of this strain, when she gets a viral idea that she believes would, you know, be able to put her in the lifestyle that she's grown accustomed to. It's a very interesting take. A lot of people decide to fight capitalism in different ways, but Becky decided to fully embrace it. That is how she's dealing with living in a capitalist society, and she's trying to find a way for it to work for her. It's her own way of saying fuck capitalism. But then you can also choose to fuck capitalism, and I mean that literally. Like, you can choose to get down and dirty with the system, or at least the man, the business mogul that has made the capitalist system his own bitch. And by that I mean, everybody take a good look at Wall Street Titan by Zaires. I mean, you can't get any more business tycoon at the head of a capitalist chain like Marcus Ciccarelli, the billionaire mogul that, you know, has Wall Street in the palm of his hands. And then you have our female love interest, Emma Walsh, who fucked with Marcus. I mean, she fucked with him really hard, Really hard. That was her own way of, you know, fucking capitalism, taking it quite literally. Now, how do you get a business mogul to first fall in lust with you and then fall in love with you? It's pretty simple. 1, you sign up for a dating app. 2, you have a name that's similar to one of Boston's elite heiresses. 3, you happen to go on a date in the same location as this heiress is meant to be. 4, there's a bit of misunderstanding and miscommunication, but there's that old chemistry between yourself and Marcus. 5, you lose your purse, you know, after the conversation. And 6, Marcus shows up in front of your apartment, purse in hand, and the rest, as they say, is a happily ever after. What? Does that sound like hard work? Have you met capitalism? Because that little shit is not about to make life easy for any of us. One group of people who really understand the capitalist system and just how it fucks all of us collectively in the asses are temp workers, because they exist in a system that, you know, sees them as faceless cogs in a wheel. They exist to fill only one need and are kicked immediately to the next one the minute it is that need has been fulfilled, all the while searching desperately for a way in which their source of income, their source of livelihood can become permanent, in a sense. The way in which Hilary uses her character to further show us the absurdity of a capitalist system is, quite frankly, beautifully bizarre. Her lead character is, in a sense, nameless, just as the many temp workers that exist in our society. People don't really take the time to learn the names of people that are doing temp work. It's just, they are meant to be transient, right? And her lead character has to fit herself to suit whichever role that she's given. So 1 minute she's a pirate on a pirate ship, the next minute she's a medical scanner, and the next after that she's a murderer's assistant. The rules of her job are as random and nonsensical as the capitalist system she works in. And it's a great take on how dehumanizing the capitalist system really is, and how it does not see its workers as anything but a means to an end. Now, Indigo by Beverly Jenkins is yet another romance novel that I'm going to be putting on our list, but unlike what happened with Wall Street Titan, our lead character Guin does not embrace capitalism. In fact, he is a member of one of the wealthiest freed black families in America, but walks away from all that trappings of wealth to instead be part of the Underground Railroad so that he can be part of this movement to set his people free. Now, you cannot say fuck capitalism harder than that, because it walks away from wealth and it also simultaneously is doing a big fuck you to a system that profits off black bodies being a slave. Like, you gotta love it, you gotta love it. And even though Galen is injured in the course of his duties, when he does come through and regain consciousness, it's to find himself being tended to by Hester, our heroine, and he finds that surprising. What we do not find surprising, however, is seeing both of them fall in love, because that is, you know, what we signed up for. So yeah, which I would like to stress means that this book also does fulfill the fuck white supremacy prompts, which, now that I've said that, I forgot to mention that Six of Crows also fulfills the fuck ableism prompt as well. So yeah, there is that. I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned that earlier. I don't know why it skipped my mind. The same thing with The Weight of the Stars by K. Ancrum. It also contains, it also has a character with select mutism. So The Weight of the Stars can also work for the fuck ableism prompt as well. I forgot to mention that. I don't know what I was thinking. Then there's Bittersweet by Serena Bowen. I know, another romance novel. I'm on the roll today. But seriously though, if you're someone who loves farming stories and small town romances, you could totally consider picking up this book to fulfill this prompt, because our lead character Griffin Shipley he walks away from a career. He's almost drafted as a pro ball player, and he walks away from this life to return to his family's farm in order to take that responsibility on when his father dies. And it is to him that the responsibility falls for him to, you know, raise his siblings and take care of them and take care of his mother and take care of the farm and have the farm be prosperous. And in between doing all of this, Audrey, who was a one-night stand from college, shows up at his farm wanting to buy his produce at ridiculously low prices because the corporation and the corporation that is in charge of the city restaurant that she works on has given her the task to go to this town and try to get all those farmers who sell awesome foods and to give away their produce at outrageously cheap prices, because, you know, the system, even though they can afford to pay more, refuses to pay more. And Griffin rejects this, you know, counters this, objects to this, and teams up together with farmers in the area, and then they gang up in a form of like unionizing them in order to demand what their payment is worth. And they do eventually get won over the corporation that would rather see them, you know, be paid paltry sums for something that they've worked hard for. I really did enjoy it. I found it a blast. If you like stories about communities who are led by leaders who want the collective best for everybody within the community, and together they are fighting back against a corporate system that wants to cheat them out of what they are worth, then Bittersweet is for you. And I would state also that the sex was pretty hot. So yeah, that's also an added bonus. Now, if classics are your thing, you know, and I do love classics, so if classics are your thing, then I'll recommend you maybe try out North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. Now, just like Pride and Prejudice was a battle of the classes, of the class system in England at the time, North and South is also a battle of ideology, a battle of socialism and capitalism. In this case, the socialist is Margaret Hale, who just recently moved to Milton with her family and who is dismayed at the abysmal working conditions that the mill workers in the area that she's living, that they are subjected to, and she objects to that very loudly, very vehemently, and seeks to right that situation. The capitalist in this situation, however, is John Thornton, the wealthy self-made man who owns the mill and who clashes with Margaret's reforms and interference with his workers, and of course they both fall in love while they're doing that battle. So I think if you love classics, if you're someone that loves to read classics and you've not read North and South, you should totally consider picking it up for this prompt. Then there's Devil on the Cross by Ngugiwa Thiong'o. Now, a lot of times when we think about colonialism, especially colonialism in Africa, we tend to operate under the assumption that it is over, when technically colonialism was merely replaced by neo-colonialism, which is driven and powered by capitalism and has a devastating impact on African countries, all the while further establishing the dominance of Western countries in Africa, but in a way that makes that power appear benign. Now, Ngugiwa Thiong'o confronts this existence of neo-colonialism in Kenya using his character Waringa, who is a young woman who relocates from a rural Kenyan town to the capital city of Nairobi and is exploited first by her boss and then by a wealthy and corrupt businessman. Now, this book further explores the experience of African women in the midst of the imperialism of neo-colonialism. And it just occurred to me that this particular book has a lot of isms in it, but Ngugiwa Thiong'o is fucking brilliant, and the way in which he uses his characters, these different characters, sure, some of them are very obvious in that this is the bad person, this is the good person, etc., etc., but he makes this clear delineation so you understand. You cannot walk away from that book without actually being able to see his point on neo-colonialism and how it's tied to capitalism and how it's tied to the further entrenchment of Western dominance on African states. And I think it is a book, it's a fictional account that is needed and relevant, and after you've read it, you would understand just why it was that the Kenyan government responded to that book by basically exiling Ngugiwa Thiong'o, because those ideas are things that they did not want Kenyans to imbibe or start to consider. So I think it's a book that is needed. Plus, it's also a book that works for the fuck white supremacy prompt as well. So if you have this book, you can have it kill two birds with one stone. And then there's Princess Mononoke film comic by, of course, Hayao Miyazaki. Now, I'm fairly certain practically everybody has watched Princess Mononoke, and if you've not, I'm just like, what are you doing with your life? That is a Ghibli classic. It's a Studio Ghibli classic. Like, everybody should watch Princess Mononoke. And I think if it is that you've watched it and you want to do a rewatch, you should probably pick up this comic first so you can also enjoy it. If you've not watched the animated film yet, maybe pick up this comic and then watch the animated film. It's practically a panel by panel representation of what goes on in the animation film. But I think that if we're talking about Fuck Capitalism, then yes, Princess Mononoke is a story that is essential and also speaks deeply to the prompt. After all, a major theme in the story is man's desperate desire to destroy the environment, all for the sake of making profits. And this is, of course, characterized by the character of Eboshi in the story. So I think it totally perfectly fits this prompt as well. So yeah, Princess Mononoke, the film comic, you should add that to your list if you're interested. And if you've missed the story and you're like, oh my god, I want to consume the story again, consider consuming it via the comic, medium. It's just as good. Then there's We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia, which it fits this prompt perfectly. I mean, Daniela is super smart, like unbelievably brilliant, and she's the top of her class, and she's an immigrant with forged papers, studying at an elite school for girls, where these girls are trained with the skills they need to run their future husbands' households. And these future husbands are like the top elite of the society. They are members of the political class of the country. This immigrant girl with forged papers, and then to make it even better, she's conscripted to act as a spy for the rebellion. And like, if that isn't the case of a double fuck you to a system that is deeply classist and seeks to clearly delineate the poor from the rich in the society, and the rich experiencing, of course, all the luxuries and comfort and the protection that their station affords them. And as such, this system ensures, tries its best to maintain that status quo. And you have this girl who is there gaming the system from both angles. What is not to love? And the fact that this book is sapphic. It is so beautifully queer and sapphic, right? And it's a slow burn romance between this girl and her competition from school. We set the dark on fire, people. We set the dark on fire. And finally, what better way to end this than by recommending the OG book that, examined capitalism, socialism, dictatorship, and the thin line that separates them. Yes, I'm referring to George Orwell's Animal Farm. Who is surprised by that? After all, the story hinges on the overworked and abused animal workers on the farm revolting against the owner of the farm, and then taking the farm on for themselves and going on to create a system of government, only to eventually realize that freedom might be hard won, but even harder to maintain, where there exists within the system people driven by their own selfish interests and desires, who then eventually bring us all back to square one. It's a cautionary tale about how in our fight against capitalism, we have to be vigilant to not trade in one abusive extortionist leader for another one. After all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. So yes, those are 20 books that I think, recommended to fit the fuck capitalism prompt. This is just a guide, so you have an idea of what type of stories you come across that would totally fit the prompt, because I cannot, if I was to sit here and just keep going, I'll keep going, but I have to end this video. So let me know what are some of the recs you're looking at for capitalism prompts. I have been seeing your suggestions on the Google Docs. That is in my FuckAthon announcement video. I have a Google Docs there where I'm collating all the lists. I have not started putting them together and taking in the suggestions, but I'm seeing them. The comments are noted. They will definitely make the list. Don't worry about it. That would be more comprehensive. For those who might have missed it, I have done a recommendation videos for the fuck white supremacy prompt. I will also leave that in the description bar below. I would also leave in the description bar a link to the protest and donations and different means in which you can fight this fight, you know, against police brutality, against the racist decisions and statements and steps taken in the United States. I think it is time for us to call for accountability, and I'm going to leave all those information down in the description bar so you can also check it out. I would also state that I did put up in my community tab a poll asking, because I created a Patreon account last year. Yes, I've had it last year for like my YouTube channel. I am a patron to other content creators, but I created my own Patreon page last year, and I've not been able to put it because I was just like, who would want to be my patron, who wants to support my channel? So I put out a poll asking people to vote. Please note, one, if you say no, not now, not the right time, I totally understand. I know just how hard things are, and I totally get it. This is not forced in any way. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. You don't have to do this if you don't have the money for it. You being able to watch my channel, being subscribed, liking it, sharing it is also a big support in itself, and I appreciate it. But if it is that you're interested, or if it is that, you know, not this time, just please go on that community tab and, you know, make the vote, because if I do get more than 50%, and I know that more than half of you are interested, I'm going to drop the Patreon link in the description bar. So if you want, you could be my patron. But once again, I'm stressing, I'm not forcing anybody. I'm not expecting anybody to say yes. The fact that you would even consider, the fact that you're on my channel in itself is for me a blessing, and I want to say that I'm forever grateful, and I'm so happy. Also, what the fuck, I'm almost at 5k. I am still shooketh. Like, you all know, you saw my video, my goals for 2020 video for my channel. Like, I was not expecting to hit 5k until the end of the year. That was like my goal, and I was like, it's a feasible goal, and now 5k is almost here, and it's June, and I'm just still surprised. So for the new people that discovered my channel, I tend to talk a lot. I apologize, but also I love every single one of you. I think you're amazing, and thank you so much for coming to my channel. But yeah, that is this video. If you liked it, please do not forget to give it a big thumbs up, share it. Let us have this conversation about capitalism. Let us see these different books, from romance to science fiction to fantasy to non-fiction work to literary work. Let us look at these books that discuss capitalism and figure out in our own way exactly how we're going to battle it. And if you also want, please share my FuckAthon announcement video. The readathon is going to be kicking in 1st of July. I have barely 20 days, like less than 20 days before the readathon kicks in, and it would be so much fun to participate. But yeah, if you're on Twitter and you might be interested in I don't know, hosting reading sprints during the FuckAthon, at me on Twitter, at me on Twitter, come into my DMs. I'm at Noria the Reader on Twitter, so come into my DMs, at me on Twitter. I'm definitely looking for people who can also help, like collaborate and at least help with the sprinting. And I would see you in my next video. I usually make new videos every Wednesdays and Saturdays. I know I've not been consistent of late. The lockdown has definitely been playing its toll on my mental health, but also because I want to have all the recommendations video ready at least a week before the FuckAthon is meant to kick off. I'm probably going to be doing 3 videos a week starting from next week to, you know, catch up. So yeah, there is that. I'm going to work my damnedest to make sure that all these recommendations go up in time before the FuckAthon, and I also want to have my TBR video ready before the FuckAthon launches. But yeah, that is this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself. Bye.